Recruiting oil and gas professionals is challenging without the right tools. RigZone is the recruitment platform that connects you to the candidates you are looking for. Using RigZone, employers get worldwide access to top oil and gas talent, targeted to fill the right position when and where you need it. The RigZone community reaches both active and passive candidates from around the globe through a combination of industry news, jobs, data, and events. With both recruitment and branding solutions that meet your needs, RigZone can help find the match you are looking for. Contact RigZone today to discover a solution that's right for you.
My name is Dave Lee. I'm from RigZone. I believe this is our third year being the lead sponsor. In our opinion, this is one of the best human resource conferences in the world for oil and gas. So I'm very pleased to be here as a supporting sponsor and to work with the folks from TMA and bringing all these folks here together. So if this is your first conference with TMA for this locale, I really hope you're going to enjoy it. Yesterday was really about engagement and developing the talent pool, and today we're shifting gears a little bit and really talking about emerging technologies and data and social media, how to leverage those three things for recruitment. You know, at RigZone, we sit in a unique position, I believe. We're known primarily for two things. We're the world's largest oil and gas news site. We have editors around the world that write news about the developments in our energy sector. So a lot of people come to our site for that information. And we're also known for the world's largest oil and gas job site. So obviously we sit in a vantage point where we're constantly working with folks on both sides, candidates that are looking for opportunities and those of you that are trying to identify them. And it gives us a really unique vantage point, and I believe, and I was speaking to Brad just earlier, of the uniqueness of what we face in oil and gas. But I think many times it's important to step back and to learn of what's happening in cross industries. And our first speaker today is Brad Wilkins. He's a Director of Talent Management and HR Services for AdCap Network Systems, and he comes to us from Atlanta. And he's going to share with us today some things that he has seen with the IT sector and the similarities of what we're facing. So I think there may be some really interesting learnings that we can get from some of our colleagues in cross sectors and disciplines. Brad specializes in innovative talent management strategies at growing companies. He has held architecture responsibilities for multiple integrated talent departments, incorporating talent acquisition, talent development, and organizational development across various industries. He was also named the #1 recruiter in the U.S. by theladders.com, which, like, that's mind-blowing to me. And he was also awarded the 2014 SHRM Atlanta Pegasus Award, recognizing excellence and innovation in human resources. So in his session today, he will review how AdCap was named the #2 hiring company in the country by theladders.com for its use of social media, employment brand websites, setting up applicant tracking systems that find candidates instead of eliminating them, and other cool technologies like video interviews and cultural assessments and instant chatting with his recruiters. Please welcome Brad.
Ooh. This is a big room. I'm getting a workout here. All right. Hey, everyone. I am really, really excited to be here. When I got called by Tanisha and she told me, Brad, we've got a People with Energy conference. I'm like, there's a conference all about people with energy. Woo! And she said, no, she said, Brad, people in energy. And I said, what? People in energy? But Tanisha, I'm in technology. Although I do drive a truck, so I guess I use gas, and I had some great chili last night, which also is related to gas. So I guess I'm qualified to speak here. Anyway, guys, I am so really excited to kind of share some of the things that we're doing and to hear about some of the cool things that you guys are doing on your side as well. Today's presentation, I kind of subtitle The Monsters, Inc. Effect. I assume everyone here has seen the Monsters, Inc. movie. Does everyone remember the scene where Scully, that's the big blue monster, goes into the room for the first time, and the little girl touches him, and it's a 5-fire alarm. Oh, my God. You know, everything's being totally knocked down. And then they realize, oh, everything's okay. You can actually touch a child. And the way I relate that to talent acquisition is I feel like HR, talent, whatever the heck you want to call us these days, people, we have a tendency to say, you can't touch us. No phone calls, no emails, please. Stay away, stay out of our box. We'll call you, don't call us, don't follow up. All these natural things. And why do we do that? We're afraid of that actual relationship or the legal stuff. There's all things that are keeping us away from that candidate experience when they're wanting more and more to engage, which means they're starting to go around us more and more. And so I think it's important that we in talent, this is weird to have this big glass thing in the middle, so I got to do a little loop. It's just weird to have them going around us because they don't trust us. So I wanted to kind of zoom out and say, why the heck did we get into this space to begin with? Why are you in talent? Why did you get into HR, talent? Like I said, call it whatever you want to call it. Just take a moment to reflect, because I think we move so fast in the world sometimes that we don't realize why are we doing what the heck we're doing. It may have been on accident. Very few of us may have gone to college to get into recruitment or training or HR or anything like that. So there was something that drew us there. And hopefully it was something positive. For me, it was about my personal happiness. And again, I think this will give you context for how I approach talent acquisition. And I think a lot of you probably share this, and maybe some of the language will resonate with you. About a year ago, my little niece was turning 14. She was about to go to high school. And I said, what do I wish that I could tell someone going into high school? And there was a long list, 99% of it, which she was going to ignore. You don't know everything. You think you're going to know everything. She's not going to hear that. Old Brad's going to tell her that. But what I thought I could tell her that works for me, and I want to be clear that everything I say today, whether it be personal or professional, is not perfect and never will be. That's part of the fun of it. But I said, Kaylee, instead of measuring your happiness every day on how do people treat you and what do people do for you, flip it. At the end of every day, what if you measured your happiness on what you did for someone else or how you treated someone else? All of a sudden now, and that's how I try to live my life, and again, not perfectly, but every day if I have a bad day, the cool thing, guess what? I can fix that tomorrow. I can go and treat someone better. If I treat someone poorly or don't do as much as I possibly could for someone, and so I have complete control over my happiness. Whereas if I measured it on what does someone do for me or how did that candidate treat me or my boss treat me, well, I've got zero control over that or 1% control over that. So I asked her to flip her mindset, and I think the same thing rings true with us. I got into talent because I love to help people. In fact, I initially wanted my job title to be Director of Success Enablement because I think that's what we really do. We put people in positions to be successful. And now at my company, we're relatively small. Less than 100 people, which means I get to do the whole gamut. I do everything from talent acquisition, through the development, through the workforce planning, all the way through in the secular goal alignment that goes with that. And the cool thing about that is I'm able to actually touch all facets. I think a lot of times, even especially at larger companies, TA is in its own little bubble. We learn a lot about a candidate, and then all of a sudden we put that in a filing drawer. They start day one of orientation. And they don't have any of that information, all those flags, all those positives that we learned about the candidate during the interview experience. Well, then we move on to the orientation, and they're in there for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be, and we learn a lot about them. We train them. We do assessments. We do testing, and we figure out personality fits and challenges. And then we take all that information and we put it in a drawer somewhere, and they start day one, and here's their manager, and all they've got is their resume. Even though we have all this fantastic data, well, that's the cool thing about it all being integrated, is I'm able to use all that data to create custom experiences and custom work experiences for people. Because as we all know, the boomer and their expectations of a work and their skills and things that they need additional training on or mentorship on or guidance on are very, very different than a Gen Y right out of college. You can't have the same exact work experience for all of them. And you're like, Brad, this is supposed to be a recruitment talk, isn't it? I'm ready to take my notes on recruitment. This is all recruitment. The second you isolate recruitment in a little bubble and pretend that everything post-recruitment doesn't matter is the second that you are just wasting your time and going to be continuously filling requisitions and turning people over and filling requisitions, et cetera. In fact, I like to look at talent as the pirate methodology, the 3 R's of doing talent. And these are really my core jobs. So when I kind of do, if you haven't read the book Essentialism, really nice, clean book, and talks about getting rid of the excess things in your life and your professional experiences. And for me, I always kind of make all my decisions based on these 3 R's. I'm going to avoid a pirate joke here. I've got a good one. I'll tell you later. Anyway, so the 3 R's that are all of our jobs, I think, in talent is to recruit, retain, and maximize revenue per employee. That's the nuts and bolts of every single thing that we're trying to do. Now, obviously, there's a million sub-bullets and sub-bullets within those sub-bullets that all these things require. But do your actions. Do something you're doing. Does it help to recruit? Does it help to retain? Or does it help to maximize revenue? And the answer is no to all 3 of those. Well, chances are we need to revisit if that's a priority or something you should be delegating your time towards. So on the talent acquisition side, in my industry, and you can tell me if this rings true in your industry, we have a challenge of a lack of talent and a lack of budget. Anyone here have those issues in your industry? A couple of you? Okay, cool. Then that's good to have 2 people. So I'm just going to sit over here and talk to them because they're... no, obviously, guys, that's a, no matter what industry I talk to, and I've got friends across a lot of industries, that's a challenge across the board. We're finding there's a lack of talent. And part of that is how we define talent and budget. How do we work on a limited budget and always, we're getting headcounts cut, we're getting systems cut, et cetera. How do we work within those confines? Previous solution that a lot of industries used was using outside recruiters. Anyone here use outside recruiters to fill some of their requisitions? A lot of money. In fact, my company, before I came on board, didn't have any talent function at all, and so they used exclusively recruiters to fill all of their requisitions. Needless to say, I paid for myself in year 1, which was really nice. So rather than looking at kind of recruiters and the challenge, I like to look at the positives. How can I solve that issue? And number 1 thing that I said is let's remove barriers. Let's figure out what are the true requirements of a requisition and remove excess fears. We were talking about a really unique new role that we were trying to build at my company recently, and the VP of Solution Architecture said, "Oh, Brad, that's not how we do it." He's flabbergasted. He just cannot articulate why. So I said, "Patience, Mike. Why wouldn't that work?" I mean, it could work, but it's probably not going to work. Mike, why wouldn't that work? Light bulb. And now by taking away all of the excess stuff, we took a requisition that originally was an administrative assistant and has now created an internal career path to take off 30% of the workload off of that team versus just 2% for the same exact price in terms of a headcount. By taking things and figuring out what you actually need to get done. The other piece of it is brand awareness. So not only do you need brand awareness with your active candidates, but your passive candidates and your passive candidates. So who's going to tell their friend, someone who interviewed with you, tell their friend who's going to tell a friend? That's really where you're going to get some of your most highest quality candidates, not necessarily just pure posting to job boards. So like I mentioned, in my first year, we went from using all recruiters for all requisitions to using no recruiters in my first little under 2 years with my company. So typically, HR likes to look at why someone would fail. Back to Mike, he said, "Oh, this is all the things they could fail because." And there's only 4 reasons that I've ever found that someone fails at a job. And if you've got a 5th one, please tell me. I've been using this for about 10 years, and I've never found a 5th. So that's exciting if you have one. But they either don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, training typically, they don't know why to do it, they're not motivated, or they simply cannot do it. No matter how much I know exactly what to do to become an NBA basketball player, motivated because of the millions of dollars, all the fame, the glory, I am not going to be in the NBA. It's impossible. I cannot do that. Now, obviously, if a team was to invest a lot of money in training me and motivating me and giving me incentives, well, that would be a waste of resources because each of those levels gets progressively more expensive. So traditionally, in talent, whether we know it or not, we like to run through these and say, "Oh, this person's going to fail because of this," instead of flipping it around. Let's do a little fun exercise. Write on your paper, take out a piece of paper, and with your pencil, this is really fun, simply write, "I can't find candidates." I think everyone in this room is very accustomed to saying that. We're really good at it. I can't find candidates. Not saying it's our fault, just that we can't. whatever the rules that they put in place. Now take your pen or pencil. If you're a righty, put it in your left hand. If you're a southpaw, put it in your right hand. And simply cross off the T and the apostrophe. Is that a little uncomfortable? It feels a little weird, right? But it was easy. Just because something is uncomfortable and awkward doesn't mean it's hard. It's really, really easy to change your mindset from I can't find candidates to I can find candidates. It's just going to be a little bit awkward and feeling uncomfortable along the way. And it's a really simple exercise, but I think it's pretty powerful. One of the biggest things I find is that traditional KPIs, whether you're at a VP or director level working with your recruiters or you're at the talent acquisition level working upwards, they're traditionally tied to time to fill. Retention, things like that. What are some other KPIs that we hear in that space? What do you guys have that besides time to fill? What's a traditional kind of oil and gas? Cost, okay, good. Keeping costs down. Keeping costs down, right? Not just costs down. Did you fill that requisition for the bottom 25th percentile of whatever that, 50 to 55,000, did you fill it at 51 or 52? So what I think you can start doing, and one thing that I do at my company, is my KPIs are tied to profitability of the company against total payroll costs. And what you'll find is you might actually then be empowered to spend more money on a candidate, but now you've got your skin in the game that says if I spend more money, and I use the example of the alphabet, if candidate 1 can go through the letters A through Z of a task and it takes them 3 weeks, and candidate 2 can go through A to Z in 1 week, or candidate 2, yeah. So if candidate 1 all of a sudden is, let's say, $50 an hour, so for them to get through A through Z costs us $150. Well, candidate 2 gets it done in a week, but he's $75 an hour. Well, now all of a sudden, he's actually only $75 to do that same task. So now you start thinking about how much can you actually get done for that amount of money versus simply just lowering costs. And now you have skin in the game versus if all you're worried about is time to fill or keeping costs down because that's how you're incentivized or you're incentivizing your recruiters. Well, now all of a sudden, you've got 2 different pieces of the organization fighting against each other. Oop, I think that was me. We talk about the idea of a seat at the table. And I always tell people, rather than beg for a seat at the table, we need to learn how to host dinner parties. So rather than thinking about the idea of why would someone fail, let's think about why would someone be successful. If they don't know what to do, let's talk about how do we build better communication models. That's what I was saying when recruitment has to integrate in the other parts of the organization. If you're working on it isolated, you're just going to put people through and they're going to turn over or not make it or not make the cut, whatever it may be. So how to? Are you building training programs and mentorship programs that are sustainable and that are scalable before you're dropping candidates into this pool? Why to do it? Do you have the right leadership in place? Are they motivated? Are they incentivized? Are you building custom learning branches, custom work experiences? And that obviously can do it. Are you doing pre-hire assessments and competency modeling that is actually effective versus traditional, what's your greatest weakness, what's your plan in 5 years, and what kind of animal do you think you'd be? I still have some managers that I'm fighting to stop asking those questions. Here it's 2014, they're acting like it's 1984. It's crazy. So you've got to be able to train your managers to make sure they're properly assessing and evaluating candidates, not using what they were taught when they were coming kind of up through the ranks themselves. The reality is if you're not studying talent acquisition, how are you typically doing interviews? By what you were taught, right? Or by what someone interviewed you, which means we're doing interviews the same way today at the manager level a lot of times as we were doing in 1950. Because they're just mimicking the person who interviewed them, who's interviewing the person before them, et cetera. And here we are in 2014 and nothing's changed. One of the things I love to talk about with talent acquisition is the idea of flipping our mentality. I love this Henry Ford quote. He talks about the idea if he'd asked people kind of what they wanted when he was looking at the Model T, they would have said they wanted faster horses. And we wouldn't have the Model T. So he said, let's figure out what do they actually want. They want faster, cool. But didn't they mean faster horses? They just wanted faster. They wanted to get from point A to point B more efficiently and more effectively. Has anyone here ever had to look for a New York apartment? Cool. Yeah, we've got a few of you. I'm in Texas. Sorry to speak about New York here. I've looked for a New York apartment. You cannot find a perfect New York apartment. They do not exist. Even if you're a quadrillionaire, I am convinced you cannot find a perfect New York apartment. And so one of the things that's great, if you're looking at recruiters, I'd find someone who spent a little time in New York because they're used to getting to the core of what's the most important thing at a certain price point, and everything else does not matter. I love to cook, but having a clean bedroom and a safe neighborhood and closet space was way more important than my first New York apartment, which had a shoddy little kitchen. That wasn't an essential requirement for my first apartment. In the same way, Peyton Manning. A lot of people said Peyton Manning was over the hill, that he was done, he was injured. That's why he was released from the Indianapolis Colts for nothing. They didn't trade him for a draft pick. They released him, said, nope, you're over the hill, you're done, you're a choker in big games. And they were right. The Super Bowl's passed over. Low shot. Sorry for Denver people. Oh, hey, don't throw fruit. No, but in all seriousness, except for the Super Bowl, Peyton Manning had a record-breaking season. He was too old. He was injured. He wasn't ready to take a team anymore. And yet he exceeded all expectations that people were throwing him out the door and saying, you're not worth anything. On the flip side, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, the Super Bowl winning quarterback, was drafted in the 3rd round. Why was he drafted in the 3rd round? His hands were too small. What? I wish I was making that up. That is one of the #1 things. If you read the ESPN profile on where his kind of pre-draft report, his hands were too small. They took intangible or tangible qualities that didn't mean anything, the size of someone's hand, for football, and they put it and said that's why someone's going to fall to the 3rd round. And here we have a winner, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a leader, because we weren't looking at the correct criteria. So when you're looking at kind of building your candidate pool, the next piece you want to do is kind of figure out, how do I create awareness? So now I've figured out, hey, let me get to the nuts and bolts of what the actual requisitions, important qualities are. How do I create awareness? How do I create an interview cycle? How do I create a cultural definition of my organization so I can hire against that? How do I create an awareness for that culture within both my organization, the internal community, so for your sake, the oil and gas, and then even on the larger scale, how do I look outside the industry? So one of the tools that I used to define culture was a tool called RoundPeg. And what RoundPeg does, essentially it does an entire company-wide cultural analysis and then comes out and gives you definitions by team. So basically they kind of put most important, less important. And they give you by team and by company and by individual what is their culture. And so then you're able to hire against and work within the confines of a cultural definition. Because if you're not going across the company, how many people saw the story about Bat-Kid about a year and a half ago now? So Bat-Kid was this young little fellow. He was kind of on his deathbed, essentially, and he wanted to be Batman for a day. And the city of San Francisco actually shut down. This is the San Francisco Chronicle, renamed itself for that day. The Joker was robbing a bank. There was a woman off a bridge. It's a really beautiful story. Bring a box of Kleenex and kind of go watch it on YouTube. But the reason I bring this story up is because if one person in the organization in San Francisco had not understood what they were doing and why they were doing it, well, you'd be in big trouble because all of a sudden the poor Joker actor was going to get arrested before Bat-Kid could come and save the day. Now, I'm from Atlanta. On the flip side of the spectrum, Atlanta is really, really well known for excellent planning and never having any kind of challenges with getting everyone engaged in the same direction. Whoo! Woosah. My office floor is not as comfortable as it looks. Why did this happen? This happened because across the organization of Atlanta, there was poor communication of what the heck we were doing and why we were doing it. I think even here in Houston, if you were to release the elementary school, the middle school, the high school, and the work all at the same exact time, take snow off the picture, you would have the same exact disaster. Yet there was not communication when the elementary schools, they were being let go. The middle schools, they were being let go. It's really, really important, even if you're doing talent acquisition, let's say on a rig, and that may not have anything to do with the corporate office, everyone in the organization needs to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So one of the things that we've built at AdCap is the concept of clear, especially when it comes to recruiting Gen Y. It's really, really important they understand that they need to come in at a certain level. I had someone yesterday, in fact, on my way down here. I was talking to him. He is an entry-level candidate, 3 months out of school. He's been with us 3 months. And he thought he was ready for a promotion to the team lead position, which was being vacated. I said, oh, well, his name also is Mike. I guess you have to be named Mike to work in my company. I said, Mike, why do you feel like you're ready to be that 3 months out of college? He said, well, I'm not really ready, but I think if you gave me that position, it would encourage me to work harder. Mike, I think you've got it a little bit backwards. You work harder, then you get the promotion. You don't get the promotion, then you work harder. So they're a little confused. And so what we've done at AdCap is create the idea, and he got a little off path because a new opening a new shiny object came. But with all of our candidates, entry level, mid-career, whatever it may be, we like to lay out for them what is their career path. What's not only the next step, but we like to go at least 2 deep typically. And then what are the learning objectives, expectations, and accountabilities that they need to hit to move to that next career step? It's totally quantifiable. It's very driven on here are what you need to do from a business objective, a learning objective, an accountability standpoint. And then most important, what are the rewards if you get there? So it's not just a job title, or maybe it is just simply a job title promotion. I've got a friend who's been promoted 3 times in 2 years. She hasn't gotten a raise yet. Needless to say, she is tired of looking and trying to get promotions because she thought that with a promotion came a raise. 3 times, strike out, she's done. So we lay this out for everyone across the organization, but this is really effective, especially with your entry level. And I know in your industry you've got a big trend of boomers starting to shift out and entry level kind of moving in. Well, how do you set up expectations for them to move into those boomer positions? And you've got to be able to define those, not only for the candidates themselves, but also for management. Help guide them to create successful situations. So for instance, at AdCap, we've got our sales progression where they are in this role for 60 days, then 3 to 12 months. It's all self-paced at our company in terms of if you hit these learning objectives, expectations, and accountabilities, then you trigger the next raise and promotion. Another cool thing that we do that I'm not going to go into too much, but we do quarterly raises at my company instead of annual raises. Again, very Gen Y friendly. They don't want to wait a year for a raise. They want to get a quarterly raise. So instead of putting them in a situation where they're going to be looking or moving on somewhere else to get a raise, now you're always kind of feeding that ego, giving them that redefinement. You're kind of meeting in the middle of their expectations that they're used to. They're accustomed to testing. What do I have to do to pass the test? Okay, cool. That's a little bit anecdote that doesn't work in the real world, but how do we kind of take what we've got in the real world and model it to kind of mirror what their expectations are and how they can then transition themselves into a position? We can stand here and say they're crazy. They're going to stand over here and say you're crazy, or more like you're crazy. And the reality, though, you've got to turn to them and say, let's take a step forward, you take a step forward, and kind of meet in the middle. When it came to employment brand, how many of you have struggled with your marketing department? Nobody. That's great. You guys have a great industry. So my marketing department was fighting me pretty hard about things that I wanted to do from an employment brand because it's a different strategy than my company brand. So rather than say, Brad, you get 1 careers, she said, Brad, I get 1 careers page. That's all it was. No subpages, no links to anything else. I said, I can't operate that way. So I went and built my own careers website working at adcap.com. It cost me $75 to do. It's not the sexiest website in the world, but now I've got 20+ pages. And there's pages on our benefits, there's pages on our culture, there's pages on our fun things, on our charity stuff. Also, one thing I did on my webpage is I used different language, and this is one of those things that it's actually one of my December initiatives, is to get even deeper into this, different language for different candidates. The expectations of an experienced, executive level candidate is different, and I shouldn't use the same fun lingo as I'm going to use for an entry level candidate. So if you look on our website, if you go to workingatadcap.com, you'll see there's a split. Which are you? Are you entry level? Are you experienced? Are you sales? Are you operations? Are you technology? And then on those subpages, we speak to the company in different words, different language that appeals to those subsects, rather than try to create an employment brand that captures all of those people. Very easy to kind of drill down at a detailed level. Also using job boards. So David mentioned the awards from the ladders, and I obviously reached out to them. I said, thank you very much for the award, but can you tell me what the heck I was doing? One of the things they said that I do a lot more of than most people is I use the job boards not to just post jobs. And that's a part of the post and pray, I think is the new word for it. that's a part of it. And I'm not going to say that that's not important, because you've got to have some awareness that way. But actually digging in and doing keyword searching, looking in different geographical regions, both on job boards and LinkedIn. Now, the thing about LinkedIn, we'll talk about in just a second, LinkedIn is where most people are using. Ironically, they've moved on. So the Ladders has 15 years worth of resumes. It's actually a great database. The Ladders, Career Builder, the Rigs, whatever it may be, they have a database of candidates, and you can go and dig in and do passive campaigns to those individuals as well. Not necessarily even targeted campaigns. So I might target controllers to ask, hey, do they know anyone who wants to be a staff accountant, who's maybe a bookkeeper ready for a promotion? So being able to use the job boards as applicant banks as well. LinkedIn Recruiter, I'm not going to talk too much about. I assume everyone here is really, really familiar. It's a critical tool on the talent acquisition side. One of the things about LinkedIn that I talk to people about, though, is open acceptance of candidates. Again, we've talked about the Monsters, Inc. effect, not wanting candidates to be allowed in. I have a bad habit, and I've actually had to hit a ceiling, where I accept every LinkedIn invitation. Now, everyone has a different strategy for that. To me, what I found the value of that, I've got 29,000 first-degree connections. 30,000 is the ceiling, so I've had to start eliminating some people that might not ever be in my space. But when I post an update about like our cornhole tournament at AdCap, well, now you see there 3,800 people looked at that posting. And some of those were second degree. If you look at the little circles, the second circle, that's about 600 people who aren't connected to me who learned about the fun cornhole tournaments at AdCap. And so now we're reaching a second degree of candidates. So if your recruiters are declining invitations, well, you're missing the ability to run and get your engagement out there at the LinkedIn level from a social media standpoint. And just to clarify for me, I use Facebook for personal, LinkedIn for professional. My Facebook, I have like 60 friends. My LinkedIn, I have 30,000 friends. The other thing about job postings is use psychological sales training. So sales, marketing, and recruiting have a lot of overlap, and yet we don't use a lot of the strategies. So one big sales strategy people use is the idea of yes. So if you go to all my job postings, and these get customized a little bit, but they all start out with some 3 questions. 3 is a nice magic number. Do you enjoy working with the latest, greatest technologies? Yes. Do you want to work at a company that treats you like an adult and you have fun like a kid? Yeah. Do you want somewhere with career growth and promotion opportunities? Yes. I mean, who's going to say no to those 3 questions, right? I mean, maybe someone who's different. But if so, nice to meet us. So before they've even read my job posting, they've psychologically to themselves said yes, yes, yes. And they're going to be looking at my posting with a lot more positive an attitude than if they're just looking at job details, requirements, basic compensation, benefits, stuff like that. Also on the benefits, a lot of you may have even better companies than you realize, and with round peg and things like that, you can kind of dig into some of that. When I came on board, again, there was no highlight of any of the benefits or anything like that, and a lot of the stuff that we had at my company was already in place. So, the health insurance, we take that for granted, but there's a lot of companies that aren't necessarily offering 401k matching. There's not a lot of companies necessarily that are offering paid training or uncapped commissions on the sales side or whatever it may be. So find out what's unique to your organization and make sure you're highlighting those in the job posting. Candidates, that's where they're looking. They love the detailed job posting. They don't want to have to go hunt around and go to your careers page and click 3 links. They want to see it right there in front of them. Work-life balance. What are the fun things? Latest technologies, extra perks, little things. If you have free snacks and free drinks at your office, not everyone does that. So what are the perks of that? If, again, I'm not that familiar with your industry, but if on the rig, they get catered meals or something like that, hit the things that someone who's out of industry may not necessarily appreciate. If you're in the tech sector, you're used to free snacks and free drinks and ping pong. But if you're not from our industry, if you're from copier sales or something like that, well, you look over and you're like, whoa, ping pong and basketball at the office, that's really cool. If you're in the tech sector, like, yep, check, they have that too. So maybe there are some things in your company, your industry, that you don't appreciate are actually really, really cool to someone who's not in your industry. So how do you attract people who aren't just industry specific? I think we all get asked this interview question, and this really helps me not only from a recruitment standpoint, but also to help with the managers to get down to the nuts and bolts of the job posting. All my job postings talk about a day in the life. That's probably #1 interview question that everyone always asks. What's a typical day in the life? Most recruiters, unfortunately, can't really speak to that. And so by forcing the recruiter to interview the manager and create this for the job posting, it also helps narrow down the focus of what the heck do you actually need the person in the job to do. as well as answer that question and save yourself probably 2 to 3 minutes during the interview process. One of the big things about my interview process is I like to try to keep them efficient. I don't like superfluous questions that just go on for no reason or things that I could get in front of. We try to answer most of their questions before they arrive in the room. The last piece of a job posting is similar to sales. Again, how many of your job postings have a call to action at the end? So you've read this, I want, yes, 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 and here's the requirements. Oh, I've got those. Oh, look at all these awesome perks and benefits. Fantastic. Day in the life. Oh, that sounds like what I do right now. And then we just hope that they're going to click the little apply now button at the end. Well, call them to action. Does this sound like a great fit? Again, mirror the yes. It sounds like a great fit. What are you waiting for? I don't know. Apply today. Boom. Call to action. It seems so simple, and yet a lot of kind of across the board, not just your industry, leave this piece out. There's no call to action after you get them excited reading the job posting. These little nuances, I mean, again, David and I were kind of talking about the award that I won. That's BS, really. I mean, I don't know what the heck that is. How do you say I'm better than you or you or you? I mean, it didn't mean anything to me except that was very nice. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. But it's these little tiny tweaks that actually allow you to be a great recruiter or a great talent acquisition manager. Another really simple thing on your LinkedIn job postings. How many of you link to your applicant tracking system right now? Oh, not a lot of you. Okay, so a lot of companies, or maybe you just don't like to raise your hands in this room. I forgot my deodorant too. It's okay. Anyway, so how many of you remember when you were looking for a job? And that's one thing I always like to kind of zoom back out again. I said, when I was looking for a job, what did I hate? I hated no phone calls, no emails, please. I hated this. Apply on our website. Just some applicant tracking system that's going to take me 10 minutes to fill out. Whereas all I could do is hit apply now, and it sends my LinkedIn profile. I can attach a quick cover letter if I need to. Again, making it easy for candidates to apply versus harder. I said, Brad, we want harder. We want to screen candidates out. I'm trying to flip your mentality. Instead of eliminating candidates, how do we find candidates? And then I'll tell you about how some of the cool things that we can do to go weed through those in a different way than we traditionally have looked at candidates. Applicant finding systems versus applicant eliminator systems. So a really big shift there. When I post jobs that have a link to my ATS, I have about I think it was a 73% less applicants than if I click apply now. It's so much easier. And then what I simply do, they apply now, it goes into our email box, and then we trigger a quick, fun, friendly, personal email to them that says, hey, thanks for your application. Would you mind doing this? It takes 2 minutes. Here's the link. Here's the exact instructions. We look forward to seeing it. It's got a little bit more of a personal touch. A lot of candidates hate the fact that companies never reply to them. Well, now, within a day, typically, they've applied on LinkedIn, and we're already replying to them with the next step instructions in a little bit more friendly of a format than LinkedIn sending you straight to the applicant tracking system. One of the ways you can measure your applicant tracking, your LinkedIn success is on your talent brand index. Everyone who have a LinkedIn recruiter, I assume you've gone through kind of your quarterly report. Everyone familiar? If you're not, and you're at either a recruiter level and you don't get to see your quarterly report, or you're at director or VP level and you don't really get to zoom in that deep, go check out what your talent brand index actually is. It's a really nice way not only to look at what's your progress as a success of using the LinkedIn recruiter function, but also how do you stack rank against your competitors. So for instance, we'll skip that one because I'm running a little long. So here's me versus my competitors. We're at, I think, 36%, right, or 34% is the most recent report I got. My next closest competitor, that's a national company. We're just a regional company in Georgia, the Carolinas, and Florida. We're double my next largest competitor, CDW. You've probably seen their commercials with Charles Barkley. Below that, Cisco. You've probably seen their commercials. We're having double the success of some of these multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, it's scaled. Of course, it's a percentage, so it doesn't mean that I'm having the same number of engagement. It's simply of my possible reach to engagement, I'm having double the success of some of these billion-dollar companies. And it's all I'm not holding any secrets back. I'm just doing some of these really little things that I'm telling you about. That's all I'm doing. There's no secret sauce, but it's these little tiny tweaks that differentiate between 34% and 18% or 8% for some of my low competitors. Most of my jobs that get posted, my average applicant, I get about 70 applications per job. Again, if you look at on LinkedIn, CDW and Cisco, some of these bigger companies, they're getting less than 30 for most of their LinkedIn jobs. Because LinkedIn jobs are more expensive, so those are really some of your more specialized roles. You're not necessarily putting an administrative assistant on LinkedIn. Next piece of social media, how many of you are familiar with Glassdoor or the Yelp of employment? The funny thing is, if you ask candidates and do the same, how many of you think about that employers know about Glassdoor? They think it's a secret. I love it. You probably don't know this, Brad, but there's some really nice things about you out there on the internet. Really? Oh, fantastic. Oh, where did you find? Oh, it's a website called Glassdoor. Really? Fantastic. Glassdoor is kind of the candidate's Yelp. They think it's a secret. Now, the reality is the same way as Yelp. Who posts on Yelp or on Glassdoor? When you're really happy or you're really sad. Nobody's like, oh, that was an okay meal. Let me Yelp about it. 3 stars. Now, again, there's Yelpers. That's a whole different topic. But with Glassdoor, if you're not engaged and actively working on your Glassdoor, and that means inviting what I call safe people, people who you know in your organization are going to write positive reviews. Make sure you're nurturing a Glassdoor mentality rather than trying to catch up when you were like, oh my goodness, my rating is 1.3, I better fix that. And then all of a sudden you have 15 ratings all in the same piece. So I have a strategy where every month I've got a couple people that I target so it spreads out. So it's not all 15 on November 18th. I have 15 Glassdoor reviews. With Glassdoor, so we're at a 4.7 right now. And I can tell you that's incredibly powerful, especially in my space where AdCap is not a nationally known brand. I don't have the power of a Cisco or you know, if in your world, like an Exxon or a BP. Again, I apologize for not knowing your space better. But 4.7, it says to the candidate, oh, they might be a great place to work. The other big thing is when you have a negative ad. So where I get some negative hits sometimes is on my interviews because my interview process is a little bit different. And I respond to every single person. And I say really detailed, I try to be friendly, thanks so much for your feedback. Engage in the same way, and we don't have any negative reviews, and I say that with humility, just we've been lucky and we treat people right, and we're small enough that we don't have a lot of outliers. But if I do get a negative review, I certainly would respond to it. You can set up your employer center, and you can figure out now, you're like, Brad, how big of a deal is Glassdoor? So before I came on board, so I came on in March 2013, in the year before that, we had about 300 total visitors to my company's Glassdoor. Now again, if you remember, we were using outside recruiters. There was no talent function whatsoever. Since I came on board, in the first 18 months or so, we've had over 60,000 people visit my Glassdoor. I've filled about, I think I've had 24 people hired in the last year, and I've got about 10 postings right now. So let's say less than 50 job postings total in the course of 18 months have attracted 60,000 people who are looking at our Glassdoor. That's not, they're at a job board. They're searching what's it like to work at AdCap or AdCap Glassdoor. And again, a lot of that is some of the things that I'm saying, and they're looking for validation. I posted all these great perks and benefits and how fantastic it is to work here and the promotion opportunities. They're looking for validation of that post, and they go here to Glassdoor. And lucky for us right now, they find it. So if I look at my national competitors, my 2 #1 competitors for talent, their names are Presidio and Nexus IS. These are national companies, not regional. We're blowing them out of the water. So, you know, 9,000 was an outlier. That was when I was running a sales campaign, and salespeople have a tendency to be more active in terms of Glassdoor in general. But we're blowing them out of the water by thousands of views a month when they're posting hundreds of jobs, and I'm posting 10 jobs. So to kind of bring it to your space a little bit, and I don't know how to pronounce their name, so I apologize, but I said, who was the best medium or small business to work for here in Houston that was in the oil and gas space? Does anyone know who won the Houston Chronicle Award last year on the medium side? Good, that means they're not here. So they're actually doing pretty good. So they're the green line. Their name is Cheniere Energy. Anyone familiar with Cheniere? So I guess they won the Houston Chronicle best kind of medium oil and gas company to work for. And so you can go on Glassdoor in your employer center and see how you stack rank against them. And you see that there are kind of about 1,000 people every month beneath them. And I don't know how large they are. I don't really know anything about them. But you can go to Glassdoor and compare yourself to the people that are competing for the same talent who are sitting at the table next to you. Don't trip them on the way out. So again, we talked about this idea already, the idea of applicant tracking versus applicant removing versus applicant finding. And most people know that an applicant tracking system for them is a black hole, right? How many of you, when you were looking for jobs, wanted to fill out an applicant tracking system? Good, no liars in the room. Like an honest group, that's nice. A lot of candidates, they literally went, nope, I want to talk to someone, and they create all these barriers because they're used to that being a black hole where they're never heard from. I just got a rejection letter about a week ago from a job I applied to like 2 years ago. It was nice of them to clean out their system and send me a rejection letter. It's crazy, and yet we do things that if we were the applicant, we would never want someone to do to us, and yet we do it to them. The Monsters, Inc. effect. We keep them at arm's length for no reason. My previous applicant tracking system that I cannot name, both for legal reasons as well as the fact that they're here, it took about 6 minutes and 37 seconds to complete the application, and I had a 43% drop-off. Have any of you looked at your stats of how long it takes to complete an application and what kind of drop-off you're having? Look at those numbers, and if your applicant tracking system is too cumbersome, too much work, too long, et cetera, you're probably having a significant drop-off, and your applicant system's taking too long, et cetera. So I flipped to something really simple. Again, I went back to essentialism. What the heck do I need to know about this candidate? How can I screen them quickly, look at them quickly? And I basically said, hey, their first name, last name, email, phone number, a few quick qualifying questions that helps me sort them. And boom, upload your resume, use LinkedIn to apply quickly if you need to, and you're all done. The new system takes 1 minute and 22 seconds. Very, very friendly for a candidate. So now when I have them hit apply now on LinkedIn and I send them an email, I can tell them, hey, this takes less than 2 minutes to apply on our applicant tracking system versus have them click apply on company website and assume that it's going to be some dark black hole that's going to take them 6 to 10 minutes. Some of those applicant tracking systems I think I just gave up because they were 10, 15, 20 minutes. I mean, you don't need to know every single class I took in college. It's like, what? You don't need to know every single manager, and I need to go find the phone number, and all these requirements that don't matter in the initial evaluation stage of candidates. Get back to the foundation of, can they do the job? Applicant tracking systems that take 15 minutes do not help assess, can they do the job? So for a lot of our interviews, we do very practical, competency-based interviews that say, show me versus tell me. Now, my entry-level roles are my most challenging ones to fill and to screen out. Those are the easiest, in some ways, to use as a case study here for you guys. When I posted a true entry-level position, I'm talking about one that requires no experience, no major required, no anything, just a true entry-level job that typically is being posted entry-level and needs 3 to 5 years experience. But I'm talking about a true, no experience required, get your foot in the door and work your way up, entry-level job. I got a lot of calls from parents everywhere. Get them out of the house, get them out. So needless to say, you're like, Brad, wait, you removed all requirements? Yes, I don't care where they went to college. I don't care what they majored in. How many of you, when you're 18, nailed it right on the head what you were supposed to major in? I certainly didn't. So we're using what someone decided when they were 18, who's now 22, as a qualifier. Where they went to school. I saw, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell recently said, if you're in the bottom 25% at Harvard versus the top 25% at a state college, which of those is actually a better scenario for you? And so education's a whole other topic for another day. Needless to say, when I said no requirements, no experience required, I don't care what you majored in. Now, there are certain fields that I think majors are in accounting. You need some foundational knowledge there. But at the end of the day, nothing. Brad, my applicant tracking system doesn't know how to screen for nothing. If I say screen and I had 1,500 applications, well, guess what? I still have 1,500 applications. So we invite all of them in. So for my entry-level technical engineer, there's no other position like it in the Southeast. We got 1,500 resumes for that position. No experience required. I don't care where you majored. I don't care if you have anything in your resume at all that has anything to do with that field. Come on in. We invited 50 people in at a time. We used the same scheduling software that a yoga class uses. It's called Schedule City. And so they could pick a time slot. And once the class was filled, the yoga class, if you will, once 50 people were in that room, and we did overbooking, kind of like an airline, so it was 55 was the actual number. But once we did that, then you had to pick another time slot. And you came in and you took an hour-long written technical evaluation on the basics that we need you to have in the door. What do we need you to know to be able to do the job successfully? And that weeded out, went from 1,500. Once we told them what they were going to be tested in, only about 700 people came in. Of the 700 people that came in, 40 scored a 95% or higher. I didn't have a strong cutoff. 95% felt good because 40 was a nice clean number. In fact, it was more than we expected. So then we actually put in a new layer. We actually used video interviewing. So we actually had 1.2, or 1B, if you will, to do a video interview to help us narrow down further, because the first step for our engineer is to go into our support desk. So communication skills were something important to that role. And we basically said, a customer is angry. Tell us about how you would handle that. Or explain the difference between this technology and that technology. How do they communicate technically? Kind of behavioral interview questions done via video. And I'll show you how we used video because we do it on the sales side a lot. Then we had them come in and do a whiteboard exercise. Gave them the assignment in advance. Prepare as much as you'd like. You had a week to prepare. Some probably did it the morning of. Probably some of them spent all week and 50+ hours working on it. Who knows? You could tell when they came in. They showed us them doing the job. Then we used the round peg, and I'll show you how that cultural fit goes against it. And then final interviews were narrowed down from 1,500 to 700 to 40 to 20 to 6 final candidates for my VP of Engineering. Never talked to a recruiter along the way, none of the kind of generic 5-year plan, weakness questions, any of that stuff. Show me you can do the job. Show me, show me, show me. Hey, Josh, here's 6 candidates who have demonstrated they can do the job. Boom. It's been a tremendously successful program, and what we've been able to do is create a talent pool rather than complaining about the lack of a talent pool. I could sit here and say, well, Josh, I don't have an engineer that has these requirements, or I could say, let's build one internally. And that's a whole other presentation for another day. On the sales side, similarly, we did a one-way video interview. So when I posted an entry-level sales job, we again had 2,000+ resumes. I invited them all to complete the one-way video interview. Then we actually did a 3-minute mock sales presentation. So we gave them one of our products and said, create a 3-minute sales presentation on this. How would you approach it? Then we did the personality cultural fit. And then actually this Friday, we've got 10 final candidates coming for our entry-level sales role. They meet with 4 of our senior account managers, our VP of sales, and a couple people who have been through our entry-level program before in 15-minute blocks. So it's speed dating. 4 people, 15 minutes. And the first 5 minutes of the speed dating exercise, let's do a mock cold call. How would you cold call? And they've got a piece of paper, the interviewer does, that says the words hang up. And if the person gets hung up on, they get hung up on. And we want to see how do they take that. Because that's showing me, can you take the emotional punch in the gut of being hung up on? That's really hard in sales. Instead of, well, tell me about how much you want to be in sales. Oh, I love sales. I love money. It's cool. Show me. Our interviews are very show me, which lets me get rid of all those other requirements and use my applicant tracking system to find candidates instead of eliminating them. So Spark Hire is what I use for my video. I have no affiliation with them, but I think they're one of the best companies I've ever been a part of because they treat our clients, our candidates, like their own. They call them on weekends if they're having technical issues. They treat them like, and they come back to me and say, hey, Brad, that guy was a jerk. They say, hey, Brad, that guy was really, really nice. He was just having some issues. Hey, Brad, that guy's a technical need. They give me feedback when they have technical issues. They get directly sent to Spark Hire. And what the cool thing is they get to do this video interview on their computer or smartphone anytime, any day that they want to. So let's say that I give them a week to complete the interview. They could do it at 2 in the morning. And if, again, we want to make sure that we're incorporating people who may not have those tools, although the cool thing is most people have access to a smartphone or a webcam in some capacity here today. We say if you don't have those tools, feel free to come into our office and we can set you up in a room with it. So we make sure not to eliminate people from an economic disadvantage standpoint. But this has been really, really powerful because now, instead of having to do 15-minute phone screens, let's say I give them 5 questions, and the questions are capped out at 60 seconds. They cannot go longer than 60 seconds. Really helpful with salespeople. And so now, how many times have we, and we can't say this to candidates always, but have we been on the phone, especially sales, where that's, communication is key, and it's like, I can't even understand this guy, or he sounds slimy and sleazy. And we wish that we didn't have to do a 30-minute phone screen. We wish we could just kill it after 60 seconds. The nice thing is, and again, you don't want to just kill everyone after 60 seconds, but there are some candidates you can watch, and 60 seconds in, you're like, that's a train wreck waiting to happen, and you can eliminate that person. So now I can interview 1,000 people in the time that it typically took me to interview 20 to 30. And I can watch them at any time. They can watch them at any time. The other cool thing is I can share these videos across my team. I know when I was interviewing, there was times when I would have a really good interview, and then the next one I'd bomb the interview. Just I was having a bad day, I was off focus, whatever it may be. And then they probably talk to you until like, oh, that Brad guy, I'm so excited to have him on the team. Brad was an idiot. He was horrible. And they have totally different interview experiences. Now by sharing one video interview, we get to say, here is their interview. And everyone has the same baseline to grade that person upon. And you get to use stars, so it's a quantifiable rating. And then the other cool thing is the candidate is allowed to repeat the interview as many times as possible. So they can say, I'm going to record this 30 times till I get a perfect interview. And you're probably saying, Brad, that means you're going to have a very jaded version of what that person looks like. They're going to have a perfect interview. Yes, I am. I want to see them at their best. What the heck is their ceiling? What is, if they're given carte blanche to record it and give the perfect interview, what does that look like? There's plenty of times in the interview to see how they react to stress and pressure. Where can they get to? What's their best? That's what I really want to see. And talent, we get away from that. We don't want to see people at their best. We want to throw them curveballs and scare them. And I have a friend who works at Goldman Sachs, and they bring in a scary dog to see how they react. I mean, the crazy things. Like, what are we doing? We want to see people at their best, and yet we create situations where they're going to be at their worst. We talked about the collaboration, so you can then give different ratings. And then it gives you a quantitative rating. Because I hate using words. Because George might say, oh, that guy's really good. Bob might say, that guy's pretty good. What the heck is the difference between really good and pretty good? Put a baseline of 5 stars. Now all of a sudden I can look at it quantifiably. And then I can rank them by star rankings, and that can help me to delineate who to bring back in. Obviously, we talked about culture. I'm running a little short on time, so I'm going to skip over a little bit. But the cool thing about RoundPeg is now the candidate gets to take the cultural assessment, and then it gives you a report that says, how does this person match up? It gives them a fit score. Now, the fit score, the important thing about any assessment, culture, personality, communication, is that we use it as a data point. I worked at a company once where they wanted to use the Myers-Briggs, and they said, if they're not in this one little quadrant, we won't even interview them. What? That's my new sound for today. I just made it up. Anyway, that's crazy. So what we use it as a data point, and then I look and say, where are the variances? And I don't know if you can really see there, but if you download the deck, you should have access to that. It says, here's where the variances are that cause their score to drop. And you might say, oh, high pay for good performance was something important internally, but not as important to them. Well, that's not a deal-breaking variance. That's something I can address in the behavioral interview questions when I have them face-to-face. And again, you can do that with onboarding. So now I talked about sharing information across hiring to onboarding to the actual experience. Well, now we get this personality and culture score and variances about an individual. Well, guess what? Now when they're on board, you can compare them against the team and see how are they going to interact with team members. Coach your manager to integrate them into the team by using these tools that we found out during the interview process that for some reason we like to leave in a folder somewhere. My other favorite thing about RoundPeg is the candidate gets all of their information, not the score, but they get all their personality and culture information at the end of their assessment. So it takes them about 20 minutes, and they get, here's what your culture ideally is, here's what your personality is, so they can also address objections. My ex-girlfriend, she had a test one she took, and it took 45 minutes, and she got nothing. Just waste of her time, and then a rejection letter. And that's not fun. That's not a warm candidate experience. It's going to say, hey, I want to recommend this company to someone who might recommend it to someone. So again, we talk about that. We do both customer referral programs, but also candidate referral programs. So I've gotten candidates that have come from a passive candidate. Like third-degree connections are referring candidates to us. Again, getting outside the bubble, going to networking events from different industries. And again, that's, like I said, if you're not looking at training as part of your recruitment strategy, well, all of a sudden, you've got an issue because you're going to be limited in terms of what you can recruit. Build out all the other clear pieces of it all before you worry about who can you recruit. The last piece I want to kind of share with you, so I've thrown a lot of information, hopefully 1 or 2 little bits and bytes that you can go and implement immediately, some things to chew on. There's a lot of different things that might take a little bit longer to implement. And I want to tell you a story that's a little personal. So when I was 12, one of the things that really, really impacted me, my uncle, who was also my godfather, had MS, and he died. The day before he died, we were talking on AOL Instant Messenger. Yes, AOL Instant Messenger. And he wanted to learn how to build a website. I was learning basic HTML. I mean, literally, there was, I think, like 6 code options. And I said, David, Uncle David, I'll show you some other time. Went out and played basketball, or whatever the heck I did. At his funeral, the words that kept haunting me, and I'm blessed, and I look at him as an angel a little bit because it totally was something that I'm glad happened to me because it changed the way I look at my entire life. His funeral haunting me, some other time. Some other time. It's so easy for us, whether it be personal or professional, to say some other time. And there's no other better time. And I have this quote on my door, and it's in my office. It's in two places. It's on the front of the door and the back of the door, so I can always see it. And the quote is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time? It's now. Again, anything I've said today, if there's any questions you guys have, I look at us. The cool thing about these Talent Management Alliance conferences is the networking, the people that we meet, the friendships, the professional ones, the personal ones. I think we're all part of the same community. And I can kind of be an outsider here and say to oil and gas, if all of you in this room improved your hiring and your training and your mentorship and the way that you treat people, and I'm not talking about spending money on superfluous perks. I'm talking about really improving the entire employee experience. Guess who benefits? Look to your left, to your right, and behind you, unless you're in the back of the room. Don't look behind you, you'll see a wall. But the people in this room will all benefit, so help each other because then you'll have better candidates. You're grabbing candidates from industries, and they're not all going to stay with you for the rest of their life. That's done. The 20-year career person is done. And so in the same way as I think all of you can help each other, feel free to reach out to me. It's kind of the pay-it-forward mentality. I love helping people. I'm not a consultant. We're an IT company. I got nothing to sell you. I just want to help you as much as I possibly can. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You know that I accept you. That's my email address. And again, help each other as well. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your patience and allowing me to be your guest here in a different space. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brad.